Welcome everybody to another video where I just randomly talk about stuff, ideas. So the idea I want to talk about today is the formation of the actor. And it's an idea that I've been working on for a while. And it centers around how to have autonomy in the world. So it's essentially like, how do I determine what happens with my life? That's the idea. And the idea is that, well, the reason why you usually don't determine what happens in your life is because an environment and other people have giant amounts of influence on it. And so what I believe is happening is that there's two parts of the mind. There's the observer and there's the observer and there's the impulse. And together they form the actor, which is you. But while the observer and the impulse are imbalanced, they fight with each other. So you can imagine a tug of war happening where it's evenly matched and everyone's struggling. And then if you're using all your resources on this tug of war, then anyone or anything that comes along can determine who wins the tug of war, because they just join whatever side they want to win. It's the same thing as if 100 people are voting on something and 50 vote one way and 50 vote another way, then if anyone joins that, so let's say another person joins that, then whatever way they vote ends up being, they end up being the determiner of the outcome. So the idea is that internal struggle is the main thing that prevents you from being able to determine what to do with your life. And the reason for that is because if you're utilizing all your resources on going one way or another, or judging, or determining what to do with your life, if you're using all your resources on that, then and you're in conflict, then anyone can come along and alter the outcome. So in order to get yourself in balance, I guess is what you would say, so you need to be able to learn when to use your resources emotionally and when not to. So the example I'd give is for the side that I call the observer. The observer sees a lot of things happening, and you feel like you have to make a decision based on what you see happening. So you see something on the internet and you have an emotional response. You have a judging response. You have an anger response, or you have a happiness response. And all of this can be draining. All of it can be draining. Not just negative things, even though those drain quite a bit more, but everything can be draining. So the idea with observers, what you want to practice being able to do is essentially meditation, where you don't feel like you need to expend resources judging it one way or another, where you can just observe something without having to make a judgment on it, without having to implicate it in how you interface with it. Because you see, if something's on the internet, probably you're never going to interface with whatever that thing is, unless it's something that affects you. So you need to be able to let go of things that are not, they're not things that require a response from you, an emotional response. You need to learn to sort of let go of that. Because what happens is that if you can't let go of that sort of thing, and if you feel like you need to be a part, it's just going to end up draining you. You're always judging yourself. It's like, how do I compare to what everyone else is doing? And of course, on the internet, it's all tailored to look great, and you always feel like you're behind and everyone else has a great life and you don't. So what you have to understand is that all this is fake. It's noise. You have to learn to cut through the noise. That's what you want to do for balancing the observer side of things, is learning how to cut through the noise. Don't expend, mental resources on stuff that's draining, on things that don't impact you and don't impact people you care about. And you need to take some time to sort through what you think does and what you think doesn't. So I'm someone who I like to practice meditation to achieve this sort of thing. Everyone has their own way. Some people take weeks off of social media, whatever else. Some people go camping in the woods. I don't know what you need to do, but you need to find a way to balance your life, or, well, I would suggest finding a way to balance your life so that it's not constantly having to make judgments, constantly having to react to whatever's happening around you. And then for the impulse side, which is actually a bit easier to control because it's very, very basic. The impulse is compulsion, the feeling that you're compelled to do something, to act. And this, generally speaking, is actually, it's a amygdala response, a survival response, because it's your mind going, something's wrong, I have to immediately do something, because if I don't act now, some horrible consequence will happen. And usually what happens is you overreact. You overreact and you do something dumb that you didn't think through, and then you regret that. And that also drains you, because you think, well, last time I did something when I felt I needed to, it turned out horribly, and you get depressed. And that also drains you. And then you lack confidence going forward. So what you need to learn to do is to let go of the past, let go of the need to do something, and really categorize things as whether or not they are part of that that necessary survival response, or whether they're not. You know, you don't have to get in a fight with someone just because they said something that's mean to one of your friends. You don't have to do that. Like, you feel like you need to, but it really doesn't make any impact. The reason why we have that response is because we're very tribal. In the past, you really did have to fight over things because the enemy tribe would kill you if you let down your guard. So, and nature would kill you, and wolves would hunt you, and a cougar might jump on you and eat you, and a bear or a lion or something might find you. So that's where the impulse comes from. The impulse comes from fear of consequences if you don't do something. And really, in the modern society, these sort of situations are far less. And the ability for someone to move to a different country or move to a different place where they don't have that same environment where they have to react to everything is much greater than it was in the past. So, you need to be able to see something and go, all right, I'm in a bad environment that's causing me to think in a way that forces me to react and act in a fear-centric way, which is causing my resources to be drained constantly. So you need to recognize that. Recognize that if you're surrounded by an environment, whether that be friends, family, just the natural environment or whatever else, or the government or whatever else, that if you want to be in a place where you don't have to feel like you always have to react to something, that you actually need to practice your autonomy and move. If you can be. And there's some people who are, unfortunately, they can't. And then you have to, the only way out, as far as I know, is meditation, because if you can't control the external environment, you need to learn to embrace the internal. And so if you're able to balance these two things, the observer and the impulse, then you can have what I call the formation of the actor, where you have enough mental resources that you're not expending on frivolous things, so that when an opportunity shows up, you actually are capable of taking it, because you've overcome the fears that would prevent you from doing that, or you have the mental energy to pursue it, or the motivation, or whatever else. And the idea is that once you've formed the actor, then you actually have autonomy. You're no longer in the ocean of chaos trying to swim. You're on a boat, and you can take that boat wherever you want in the ocean. That while you're surrounded by chaos, you're not the chaos. That you're separated from it. And so the idea is that if you can achieve that part, it's not just you choosing from the available options that are forced into your face or what is right in front of you. It's you choosing from all available options. So it's sort of like instead of having to deal with whatever's thrown at you, you can actually avoid things that you don't want to have to deal with, and navigate yourself into a position where you're interfacing with life in the way that you want to. And so I think this is actually the most important thing for development. And the reason why I say that, like personal development, is because if you're not able to balance these two things, you will not determine the outcome of your life, number one. And number two, you're going to set yourself up for failure. And if you're set up for failure, it's going to appear that everything that you do, that no matter how successful it should have been, it won't be, because in the end, life is chaotic, and if you're not determining your own life, then it's only a matter of time before chaos breaks whatever you're working on, whatever you're trying to achieve. And if you're just being an observer and you're floating through life and you're not acting at all, then what happens is that life happens to you. You don't get to determine what happens to you, or you don't get to avoid potentially bad outcomes. If you're just floating through life, the friends you have are the friends you have. And if you end up getting in a car accident with those friends because they're irresponsible, then that's a result of you essentially floating through life and not being able to form new friendships with people who are more responsible. For instance, if you're just floating through life, you might be stuck in a situation where you live in a neighborhood where there's violence, and then someday, something happens and you get shot or something like that. And so it's like the idea is that there are certain qualities that set you up for success, and there's certain qualities that set you up for failure. And in my opinion, the difference between me, you, and everyone else is largely determined, the difference between what we're able to accomplish is largely determined by what is inside our heads, what information we know, what beliefs we have, what past experience, what talents, what skills we've learned. And the truth is that if you get yourself to be in order inside your mind, then it puts your life in order. Because your life is a result of a bit of stuff you don't control, which is the environment and other people. And it's a result of a bit of what you do control, which is yourself. And over time, if you're fully in control of yourself, or fully, I guess, in alignment with who you want to be, then that will win out as long as you survive. That will win out. And so that's the long game. And the short game is the just surviving, right? And just improving. And it's very important to improve, because life might be okay now. Like, you might have what you need and whatever else. But if you're not improving, then there's going to be a certain point in life, guaranteed, where it requires of you greater than what you currently have. And if you haven't been improving, then you won't have enough to overcome that. So the idea is that you need to be in alignment with a progression through life, so that when that comes, you have the ability to overcome it. And so my opinion is that this is the most important concept in personal development, is what I call the formation of the actor, which is developing an autonomy from the world. So being the boat on the ocean that determines its path. The waves can still toss it around, can still influence it, but over time, given enough time that it exists there and is trying to go a certain direction, it will eventually reach its destination. Versus being a boat that's essentially sinking, or slowly sinking, or running towards the rocks or something else. And so you want to set up yourself in a way so that your internal mode of being is in alignment, so that you can weather storms. And if your internal mode of being is in alignment, then when you need to expend those resources, instead of feeling drained all the time, then you'll expend them. And there'll be fewer mistakes in life, fewer feelings of like, here's the deal. If you don't determine what happens in your life, when something bad happens, you feel like life has wronged you, and there's a reaction to it, and that also drains your resources. But if you're in control of what you know you can control, and doing what you can do, then when something happens, you realize, oh, that's something I couldn't control, and you're able to let go of it, and it doesn't drain you, and so you're able to recover from that. And also you're more able to navigate it, because you're not just impulsively reacting. Because impulsivity is gambling. It's a gamble that says a random action I take now is better than no action at all. And if you're the type of person who ends up doing that for everything, guaranteed you're going to lose the majority of the time, just like a gambler does. So you need to have a plan, so that instead of doing a random action, you're doing a planned action, or an action that you're comfortable with in reaction to whatever's happening. Well, anyways, I think I basically covered everything. The main concept is to be the boat on the ocean instead of the boat that's being tossed by the ocean. The idea is to have autonomy, to determine what you do with your life, and that's achieved through letting go of things you can't control, putting into alignment the things you can control. This can be achieved through meditation or whatever else. or the practicing of self-control. But the idea is that inevitably it results in freedom of choice being earned. But before that, you don't have freedom of choice because you're not strong enough to determine your own course, and life will determine it for you. So anyways, that's the concept I wanted to share. I hope you guys like this video. Let me know what you think, and I think that's the end of the video, so see you all later.